In the quiet hour before dawn, when the world still lingers in a hushed breath between darkness and light, you have found your way here, to daily Dharma listening. This space is not for noise, not for rushing, not for grasping. Here, you are invited to pause. To listen. To remember what the heart has always known but the mind has forgotten in the chaos of modern life. Let us begin with a story. Long ago, beneath the shadow of the misty mountains in a remote Zen temple, there lived an old monk named Tetsu. His eyes had seen many winters, his silence deeper than the stillness of snowfall. Villagers often came to him not for answers, but for the silence that birthed answers within themselves. One cold morning, a young traveler arrived, weary and confused, burdened by the noise of his own restless mind. "Master," he said, kneeling with trembling hands, "I am drowning in my thoughts. My fears consume me. How do I find peace in the middle of this storm?" Tetsu looked at him and said nothing. Instead, he motioned the boy to follow. They walked together into the courtyard, where a stone basin collected water from the mountains. Tetsu struck the surface of the still water with his staff. Ripples danced outward. "This," he whispered, "is your mind when you react to every thought. Always rippling. Always disturbed. But watch." He waited. The ripples faded. The water stilled. When you stop striking the surface, when you let go of every reaction, clarity returns on its own. This is the essence of many Buddhist teachings. Peace is not something we chase after. It is something we uncover when we remove what disturbs it. Like the still water beneath the ripples, our true nature is always calm. In a world where people seek endless knowledge, it is easy to forget the wisdom of Buddhism for beginners, that the path is not about accumulation, but subtraction. Not about gaining more, but letting go. Letting go of fear, of control, of clinging to what cannot stay. There is an old saying in Zen, "Do not seek the truth, only cease to cherish opinions." This is not to say one should not think, but rather, that our thoughts are often tinted by bias, anxiety, and past pain. What we call thinking is often just the echo of unhealed wounds. And so, the practice is not to stop thinking, but to see through the thought and return to the moment. When you learn how to stay calm and positive, it's not because you deny life's difficulties. It's because you no longer allow them to own you. Like Tetsu, who does not eliminate winter but sits with it in stillness, drinking tea, watching snow fall. Modern life is obsessed with speed. Notifications. Noise. Achievement. We are taught to run, to chase, to build empires of sand. But the ancient path of the Buddha offers a different direction. Sit. Breathe. Be present. See clearly. You do not have to be perfect to find peace. You only need to pause. To breathe in, deeply. To notice the space between your thoughts. That space is sacred. That space is you. To live without fear does not mean to avoid all danger or sorrow. It means to walk with eyes open, heart soft, and spirit steady. Fear grows in the shadows of resistance. But when you allow the fear to be, to breathe with it instead of against it, something miraculous happens. It loses its grip. Like a ghost that fades when you turn on the light. Tetsu once told the traveler, "You are not your fear. You are the one who sees it." And in that seeing, there is freedom. To find peace in chaos is not to change the world outside, but to change your relationship with it. Traffic will exist. Arguments will happen. Loss will visit. But amidst all this, there remains a place untouched by turmoil, a still point within. Buddhist wisdom is not a promise of a problem-free life, but a map to that inner refuge. Have you ever noticed how a candle does not struggle to shine? It simply burns. This is your nature. And yet, we wrap ourselves in labels, anxieties, stories. We forget that the flame still burns underneath. To transform your mind is not to force it into something else, but to return it to its original clarity. Like muddy water that settles when left undisturbed. It takes patience, stillness, and the willingness to stop stirring. Many seekers come to Buddhism with the question, how do I fix myself? But the old teachings remind us, nothing is broken. The lotus grows from the mud. Your suffering is not your shame, it is your teacher. If you have felt lost, let this be one of those Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. Being lost is often the beginning of being found. The map is drawn through your presence. Right now, this very moment, is a turning point. Do not wait for the future to rescue you. Bring your breath back home. Let it anchor you. And when the world feels loud, remember this, silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Let us speak of anxiety, that buzzing hum beneath the skin. The teachings offer a gentle remedy, not through suppression, but through compassionate observation. Notice where the anxiety lives in your body. Do not name it bad. Do not rush it away. Just observe. Breathe. And slowly, the fear unravels. This is the heart of Buddhist lessons for anxiety. You are not your panic. You are the awareness that holds it. In everyday life, apply this with tenderness. When you are in traffic, breathe instead of reacting. When someone criticizes you, notice your rising anger but do not speak from it. Let it pass like a cloud. When you feel exhausted by the news, step outside. Listen to the wind. Let the sky remind you of your place in the vastness. These are not grand gestures. They are quiet revolutions. To protect your energy in modern life is not selfish. It is sacred. Guard your morning. Avoid opening your phone first thing. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Even just 5. Let your first contact be with stillness, not stimulation. Drink tea slowly. Walk without headphones sometimes. Speak less, listen more. These are simple practices, but in their simplicity, they hold profound power. And as you begin this journey with us at Daily Dharma Listening, I invite you, not with urgency, but with grace, to stay. Subscribe if your heart feels called. Like, if a piece of this story touched you. Share, if you know someone wandering through stormy thoughts, someone who might need a lantern in the dark. Not because numbers matter, but because presence matters. And sometimes, a single line, a single story, can be the turning point in someone's life. This is not the end. It is the first step. Breathe. Rest your shoulders. Close your eyes if you wish. Let silence speak now. Tomorrow, we shall return with another reflection. Another thread of ancient wisdom to weave into your day. Until then, may your thoughts be light. May your heart be still. May you remember, peace is always here, waiting to be seen. Beneath the ancient pine trees that whisper through the night, where the wind carries the echoes of forgotten truths, a different rhythm unfolds, slower than the pace of thought, softer than the weight of sorrow. This rhythm is the breath of awakening, a return to what is real beyond the noise. In the teachings of the Buddha, in the silent gaze of the old masters, lies a gentle invitation, not to become something new, but to remember who you truly are. Once, in a monastery nestled high above the valleys where the mist lingers even at noon, there was a monk named Haru. He was known not for his eloquence or scholarly debates, but for the way he swept the leaves each morning, deliberately, lovingly, without hurry. One day, a novice asked him, "Why do you sweep when the wind will only scatter the leaves again?" Haru paused. He looked at the novice with eyes like still water. "Because the sweeping is not for the path. It is for the mind." The act, simple and repetitive, became his meditation. Each stroke of the broom was an offering. Each motion a release of attachment. Haru had found in that daily ritual a gateway to stillness, a method to find peace in chaos without needing to fix the chaos itself. In Buddhism, this quiet wisdom is not hidden. It is woven into every action, every breath. The great path does not require a throne or temple, only presence. And yet, presence is the very thing we abandon when the world pulls us toward distraction. To be calm in a noisy world is not weakness. It is mastery. A soft rebellion against the belief that urgency is virtue. When Haru swept, he was not trying to impress the abbots or gain merit. He was simply being with what is. That is the heart of Buddhist teachings, to meet each moment as it comes, without adornment or avoidance. To live without fear, we must first stop running. Fear thrives in the chase, in the attempt to escape the inevitable. But when we sit, as Haru sat, with leaf and wind and impermanence, we learn that fear is just a ripple on the surface of a deep, vast ocean. The fear does not define us. It visits and passes, like weather. Another story is told of a monk who carried a heavy bag up a steep hill each day. One morning, his student offered to carry it, seeing the strain on his teacher's shoulders. But the monk refused with a gentle smile. "Some burdens," he said, "are not lifted by others. They are understood by carrying." In that simple statement lies a profound truth. Much of what we carry, grief, regret, longing, is not meant to be erased but embraced. Not clung to, but honored. It is in the Buddhist wisdom to face suffering not as punishment, but as path. To walk through it awake, not asleep in bitterness. How then do we transform the mind in the face of sorrow? Not by denial, nor by numbness, but by insight. When we look deeply into pain, without flinching, we see its impermanence. We see that all things rise and fall, and in that rhythm, we find release. There is a gentle koan that says, "Show me the face you had before your parents were born." At first, it may seem absurd. But this question does not ask for a literal answer. It points to the essence before identity. Before labels, before trauma, before story. That silent awareness that watches all things without judgment. That is your true face. That is where calm is not fabricated but natural. Many ask, how to stay calm and positive when life feels like an unending storm. The answer is not in pretending the storm does not exist. It is in building a stillness within that cannot be shaken. A calm not dependent on circumstances, but cultivated like a flame sheltered from the wind. When thoughts rage like thunder, sit like the mountain. Let them come. Let them go. Do not chase. Do not suppress. Simply see. And in seeing, the storm begins to lose its power. There is no moment unworthy of attention. Even washing a cup, folding a shirt, tying your shoes, each act can become meditation. Not the kind with incense and mantras, but the deeper kind, full presence. When you are fully here, even sorrow becomes sacred. To protect your energy is to guard the gates of your mind with kindness and wisdom. Do not allow every voice, every headline, every passing fear to enter unchecked. The mind, like a garden, must be tended. Thoughts are seeds. Be mindful of what you water. Do not let the world decide your worth. Do not allow the opinions of others to become your inner voice. In solitude, remember who you are beneath the masks. Sit in the quiet long enough, and you will hear the truth rise, soft, clear, undeniable. If you feel lost, that is not failure. That is the beginning. The path cannot be found unless one admits they do not know the way. The teachings are not maps with precise roads. They are lanterns. They light only the next step. And that is enough. Let your breath be your compass. When confusion swells, return to the breath. When anxiety bites, return to the breath. When anger burns, return to the breath. The breath does not argue. It does not shame. It simply invites you home. There is no perfect practice. No flawless meditation. There is only this moment, and your willingness to meet it. And if you fall asleep during meditation, that too is the practice. If your thoughts wander, that too is seen. The seeing is the practice. Do not seek enlightenment as a goal. It is not a trophy for the spiritually elite. It is a return to intimacy, with the sky, the wind, the ache in your knees, the joy in a stranger's smile. With your own breath, right now. Let the silence be your teacher. Let the stillness show you what cannot be spoken. The truth is not hidden in books, though books can point. The truth is in the way your hands move when you make tea. In the way your eyes soften when you see a child. In the way your heart aches and yet remains open. To follow this path does not require robes or vows. Only sincerity. Only presence. And so, as the night stretches across the sky and the world slows its rhythm, listen. Not with your ears, but with your being. This stillness, this silence, it has been waiting for you. Just breathe. Just be. Just let go. In the vast stillness of a moonless night, where the stars shimmer like distant thoughts upon the sky's vast canvas, one begins to sense something ancient pressing gently upon the chest, a silent remembrance, not of anything learned, but of something always known. The teachings of the Buddha do not come as thunder or flame, but as the dew that forms silently in the hush of dawn. You do not chase it. You become still enough to notice its presence. There was once a laywoman named Eiko who lived on the outskirts of a small temple in the eastern provinces. She was not ordained, not robed, not versed in sutras or the old chants of Sanskrit, but her presence was revered even by monks. Each morning, before sunrise, she would walk to the old river, barefoot, carrying a single clay cup. She would kneel on the banks, scoop water, and offer it back to the earth, whispering nothing. One day, a curious novice followed her and asked, "Why do you come here every morning just to pour water back into the river?" She smiled, her face weathered like the bark of the cypress trees behind her. "Because it reminds me that what I take, I must return. That what I hold, I must release. That to live, I must not cling." This simple act became her meditation. In it were the deepest Buddhist teachings, hidden not in complexity, but in sacred repetition. Modern life often teaches us to grasp, to achieve, to collect. But the wisdom that echoes through centuries urges the opposite: release. To transform your mind is not to decorate it with affirmations or shield it from discomfort, but to let go of its insistence on control. In every grasping, there is fear. Fear of loss, of death, of not having enough. And so we hold tighter, to people, titles, plans. But like water in the hands, the tighter we grasp, the more slips away. Eiko did not need a lecture on impermanence. The river showed her each day. Its flow reminded her that everything passes, and in that passing, there is a kind of beauty that the fixed cannot offer. The teachings of Buddhist wisdom are not against form, but they remind us not to mistake form for essence. If you suffer, as many do, with the quiet ache of anxiety, that invisible weight pressing upon the chest when night falls or when silence stretches too long, then know this: the practice is not to banish anxiety, but to bow to it. To see it clearly, as one might see a guest arriving unexpectedly. The Buddha once said, just as a skilled host welcomes all guests, pleasant or unpleasant, so too must the practitioner welcome every mind state. This is the essence of Buddhist lessons for anxiety. The mind is not a battleground. It is a garden. What appears, even fear, even sorrow, must be met with tenderness. To find peace in chaos is not to wait for the world to become peaceful, but to become the stillness that remains unshaken. Chaos may whirl, people may shout, plans may fail, but the breath continues. Inhale. Exhale. This is your anchor. A monk once told a story of walking through a typhoon in his younger years. The wind screamed, trees bent low to the earth, and his robe was nearly torn from his body. He had been running, panicked, seeking shelter. But then he saw an old man sitting beneath an overhang, drinking tea, unmoved by the storm. "Why are you not afraid?" the young monk asked, soaked and shivering. The old man replied, "The storm outside is loud. But the storm inside me is quiet." It is this storm inside that the teachings address. Not the thunder of life, but the thunder of the mind. To live without fear is to realize that most of what we fear is imagined, shadows on the wall. Fear thrives in projection, not in presence. Come back to the body. Feel your feet. The soles pressing into the earth. The weight of your spine. The air on your skin. These are not trivial sensations, they are the doorway home. The mind may wander 1,000 lifetimes, but the body is always here. In this body, we meet suffering. But we also meet joy. The teachings do not demand that you escape this flesh, but that you enter it fully. With mindfulness. With grace. The Buddha did not promise that suffering would vanish. He promised a way to meet it without being destroyed by it. This is Buddhism for beginners, yet it is also for those on the path for decades, because the beginner's mind is always closest to the truth. If you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, heart racing, thoughts tumbling, do not rush to silence the noise. Sit up. Place a hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm. Whisper inwardly, "This too is seen. This too shall pass." The mind does not heal through force. It heals through presence. And when you wake at dawn, before the world begins to move, listen. Not to the city, not to the hum of your phone, but to the silence that precedes all sound. In that silence, there is knowing. Not the knowing of information, but the knowing of being. Protect this silence. Protect this energy. To protect your energy is to honor the sacredness of your attention. Whatever you give your attention to, you give your life to. Be mindful of where your gaze falls. When you feel overwhelmed by the noise of others, return to breath. When the expectations of the world become chains, return to your steps. Walk slowly. Choose slowly. Speak slowly. The slowness is not laziness. It is reverence. Even in a life filled with demands, work, family, responsibility, there is space. You do not need an entire hour to meditate. A single mindful breath is a seed. The Dharma is not jealous. It grows in small spaces. Do not underestimate the power of ordinary moments. A warm bowl of rice. The laughter of a child. The sound of wind through the trees. These are not distractions. These are the teachings. The Dharma is not far. It is wherever your attention is tender. And if you are lost, utterly lost, then you are in the perfect place to begin. Do not rush to find a map. Sit with the not knowing. Let it burn away the false certainties. To transform your mind is to allow unlearning. To return to what is simple, grounded, true. Like echo by the river, let your life be an offering, not grand or noticed, but sincere. The clay cup, the river, the morning mist, all of it sacred. And in the quiet of the evening, when the world has grown still and the sky holds the last light of day, sit. Just sit. No need for posture or perfection. Just be with what is. The leaves fall. The water flows. The heart aches. The breath continues. And in that rhythm, peace is not found. It is remembered. When twilight deepens and the hush of evening seeps into the crevices of your restless thoughts, there emerges a space beyond noise, beyond doing, beyond even the name you answer to. In that quiet corridor of time, when light fades and stillness sharpens, the ancient voice of the Dharma returns, not with urgency, but with the calm persistence of a mountain against wind. In the lineage of the old monks, there was one called Jinan, whose name meant, as it is. He lived alone in a weathered hermitage at the edge of a moss-covered forest where the river curved like the spine of a resting dragon. Jinan did not preach, nor seek followers. He lived as the wind does, present, unseen, and yet undeniably felt. Each day, he rose with the crows, not to chant, but to listen. He would place a small wooden stool beneath a tall cedar tree, sit with folded hands, and do nothing. The villagers thought it strange, even foolish, until one spring, a young man came with trembling hands and hollow eyes, whispering of a mind that would not rest. I have read the teachings, Master. I have recited mantras. I have fasted and trained. But the silence inside me is still filled with thunder. Jinan smiled, his eyes like old bark, layered with seasons. Then let us sit, and listen to the thunder together. They sat without speaking. An hour passed. 2. The boy fidgeted, sighed, then fell still. At sunset, Jinan turned to him. Thunder is not the problem. It is your running from it that tires you. In those words is hidden a jewel of Buddhist wisdom. We spend much of life trying to fix, to heal, to change what arises. But the practice is not resistance, it is intimacy. Not escape, but embodiment. To transform your mind is to stop believing every thought is an enemy. Thoughts come, like clouds. Emotions arise, like weather. The wise do not seek to stop the rain. They simply carry an umbrella and walk. In the world outside the forest, people speak of success, ambition, productivity. But Jinan, and those like him, offer a different measure, presence. When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you grieve, grieve without apology. When you laugh, let it ring like a bell through the empty halls of the self. The old teachings are not rules etched in stone. They are reminders. Gentle, persistent, like the tide kissing the shore again and again. They whisper, live simply. Live honestly. Be with what is. There is no need to renounce the world to touch its sacredness. Even in the noise of the marketplace, the teachings live. The monk sweeping the path is not closer to awakening than the mother washing rice, or the driver breathing steadily in traffic. What matters is not what you do, but how you do it. When the heart grows heavy, when the mind spins tales of regret and fear, return to the simplest thing, the breath. The unremarkable, unnoticed rhythm that has kept you alive without your asking. This is your first teacher. The inhale that arrives without permission. The exhale that lets go, every time. To find peace in chaos is to recognize that chaos is not the enemy. It is a mirror. It shows you your habits, your clinging, your reactivity. It is a great teacher, dressed in disorder. The wise bow to it, and in bowing, they transcend it. In the monastery of Blue Pine, there was a gong that rang only once a day, at the hour of dusk. But the rule was that it could only be rung by someone who had gone the entire day without a single judgmental thought. In the 100 years of the monastery's life, the gong was silent. One winter, a young nun named Keiru, new to the path, rang the gong at dusk. The older monks were shocked. They questioned her. She simply said, every time a judgment arose, I smiled at it like an old friend, and let it go. She had not stopped judgment. She had simply stopped feeding it. This is the art of how to stay calm and positive in a world that praises critique, speed, and conflict. You do not pretend anger isn't there. You simply stop giving it your loyalty. You do not deny fear. You just cease kneeling before it. And slowly, the roots of reactivity loosen. Slowly, the soil of your mind becomes fertile for peace. There is another story. An old blind monk named Ricky who carried a single bowl with a crack in it. Every day, he would walk to the village to beg for food, tapping his cane, offering no eye contact. Children would laugh at him. Adults would pity him. But he never missed a day. One afternoon, a passerby asked, "Why not get a new bowl, master? That one leaks." Ricky raised the cracked bowl to his ear as though listening to it. "It sings," he said. "What the world sees as broken, the awakened see as unique." The crack lets in the air, the sound, the stories. Ricky understood that even what is flawed carries dharma. So do you. You do not need to be fully healed to offer kindness. You do not need to be wise to be present. You do not need to be perfect to sit still and feel the moment flow through you. The path asks only that you show up, with sincerity, not with polish. And when the world asks you to be faster, louder, more, return to stillness. Return to less. Because in the less, the depth reveals itself. To live without fear is not to be without concern. It is to hold concern with open hands. It is to know that uncertainty is part of life's beauty. The mountain does not fear the wind, because it does not try to control it. It bows, lets it pass, and remains. Your task is not to change what comes. Your task is to meet what comes with the grace of a tree meeting snow. Silent. Accepting. Deeply rooted. And if today you feel lost, unsure, distant from yourself, remember that even the moon disappears for nights at a time, and yet it is never gone. So too with your clarity. So too with your center. Let it return when it's ready. Until then, rest in the not knowing. Rest in the gentle mystery of being. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply walking the path in your own way, in your own time. And every step is sacred. Even the ones you do not understand yet. Beneath the silent stars, where shadows stretch long and the air stills into an ancient breath, there is a quiet truth waiting to be seen, not with the eyes of thought, but with the eyes that open in silence. This truth does not arrive in language or logic. It arrives like a breeze passing through bamboo, known not by the wind itself, but by the movement it leaves behind. In the highlands of the western provinces, where the fog drapes the earth like a monk's robe, there lived a woman named Ayam. She was not born into Dharma nor raised in the Sangha, but sorrow brought her to the path. After losing her child to winter fever, she no longer spoke. Her laughter vanished into the river winds, and her hands, once full of tenderness, moved like brittle leaves. The villagers feared her grief might consume her. But one morning, as the sun broke through the mist for the first time in weeks, she walked to the temple gates with bare feet and empty hands and asked to learn how to sit. They gave her no teaching, no mantra, no guidance, only a cushion and silence. Day after day, she returned. Her tears fell without words. Her shoulders trembled like branches holding too much rain. But she kept sitting. She sat when it rained. She sat when the bells rang. She sat when others spoke, and she remained when they left. Seasons passed. Then, one evening, a visiting monk noticed her and asked, "What have you found in all this sitting?" She did not speak. She only bowed, picked up a fallen camellia blossom, and let it go. It floated gently to the ground. In that gesture, there was more teaching than 1,000 pages. Letting go, not out of rejection, but out of understanding. Out of love. Ayam had learned the very marrow of the path, to feel fully, without clinging. To grieve without becoming grief. To love without becoming captive to its loss. This is the quiet miracle of Buddhist wisdom. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of awareness within it. To see sorrow not as enemy, but as teacher. To see impermanence not as cruelty, but as the very thread from which all beauty is woven. In a world that chases pleasure and avoids pain, the Dharma walks a third path, the middle way. It neither indulges nor denies. It simply sees. With clarity. With stillness. With the deep compassion of one who understands that everything that arises will also pass. To find peace in chaos is not to wait for the storm to end. It is to become the eye of the storm, the unmoving center from which all motion is witnessed. When your life feels like a whirlwind, do not grasp at the flying leaves. Sit. Breathe. Watch. The storm will tire before you do, if you are rooted in awareness. One evening, an elder monk named Ryota sat with his student beneath a flowering plum tree. The student asked, "Master, I've memorized sutras, recited precepts, and followed every instruction. Yet my mind still races, and I feel no peace." Ryota picked up a stick and drew a circle in the dirt. "This is your mind," he said. "Endless motion. Now watch." He waited until the wind erased the circle. "This is peace. It cannot be drawn. It cannot be held. It can only be known when you stop trying to possess it." So much of our suffering comes from our efforts to capture what cannot be captured: time, love, meaning, perfection. But the teachings point us back to simplicity. Chop wood. Carry water. Smile. Breathe. Let go. To live without fear is not to eliminate danger, but to transform your relationship with uncertainty. Fear feeds on resistance. But when you meet it with stillness, it begins to dissolve. Like a candle's flame in morning light, it flickers, then disappears, not because you extinguish it, but because it no longer finds darkness to feed on. The monk Ryota once told a tale of a fox that chased its tail endlessly, believing happiness was attached to it. For years, the fox ran in circles, growing thin and tired. One day, it gave up, and walked calmly into the woods. The tail followed. Such is the way with peace. It does not come when we chase it. It arrives when we walk with intention, not pursuit. If you seek how to stay calm and positive, begin not with affirmations, but with awareness. Notice the thoughts that pull you toward judgment, toward comparison, toward fear. Do not argue with them. Simply notice. Return to the breath. Even one conscious breath can shift your day. Not because it solves your problems, but because it reconnects you to what is real. In your relationships, practice presence. When someone speaks, listen not to respond, but to understand. When someone hurts you, pause before you react. Ask not, how can I win, but what is being revealed in me right now? This pause, this breath, is the gateway to liberation. The path does not ask you to be holy. It asks you to be honest. Honest with your impatience. Honest with your fears. Honest with your longing. This honesty is the first step toward transforming the mind. Not to change who you are, but to see clearly who you are not. There is no need to seek faraway temples. No need to renounce your life. The Dharma is here, in the dirty dishes, the aching back, the early morning alarm. If you meet each moment with attention and softness, even these become sacred. If you feel lost, remember, the path is made by walking. The map is not outside you. It is your willingness to stop, to breathe, to feel your feet on the earth. Each breath taken with awareness is a step home. To protect your energy is to honor what drains you, and what nourishes you. Do not let the world teach you that burnout is noble. Do not let busyness become your badge. The sacred is not in the volume of your doing, but in the purity of your presence. Sometimes, protecting your energy means saying no. Sometimes it means silence. Sometimes it means walking alone at dusk, listening to your breath. These small acts are not selfish. They are sacred maintenance of the inner flame. I am, who once sat in grief without words, now teaches by her presence. She still returns to the cushion each morning. Not to escape life, but to embrace it more fully. She has learned that the breath is both anchor and prayer. That silence is not absence, but fullness. And as the wind moves through the old forests, and the moon rises once more over still waters, the path continues, not with drama, not with signs, but with the next breath. You are not late. You are not broken. You are simply here. And here is holy. The night does not ask questions. It simply falls. And in its falling, it covers the restless mind with a gentle silence, as though encouraging you to finally let go of the burdens you carried all day. In that hush, when the world outside has grown quiet, the true teachings of the path begin to emerge, not from the words of a master, but from the stillness between your own breaths. In a quiet village surrounded by cypress groves, there lived a man named Shoma who was known for his anger. He had a loud voice, a quick temper, and a heart that burned with ancient resentment. His neighbors feared his moods, and even the birds seemed to scatter when he walked by. But one spring morning, he found himself at the edge of the forest, staring at a path that led to a small hermitage. They say it was not reason that brought him there, but exhaustion. He knocked on the door, and an old nun opened it. Her name was Toa. She was frail in frame but vast in presence. Without a word, she stepped aside and let him in. "I have nothing to offer," Shoma said. "Then come with empty hands," she replied. That was the beginning. She asked no questions about his life. She made no effort to tame his fire. She only handed him a broom and said, "Sweep the path each morning. Not for the dust, but for the mind." At first, Shoma swept with fury, as though punishing the earth. His arms swung like hammers, his breath labored. But Toa said nothing. Day after day, she watched. Slowly, his movements softened. The broom no longer struck the ground, it began to glide. And without realizing, Shoma began to transform his mind. One evening, Toa found him sitting under the Bodhi tree behind the hermitage, staring at the moon. "I don't know what's happening," he whispered. "You're remembering," she said. "Not learning. Remembering what it means to be still. That is the way of the Dharma. It does not come to teach you new things. It comes to clear away what you are not. Like a sculptor who chips away stone to reveal the statue within, the path invites you to remove the noise, the story, the illusion, until only presence remains." Shoma's anger did not disappear. But it softened. It learned to bow before awareness. And in time, it no longer ruled his days. This is the wisdom offered when we ask how to stay calm and positive in a world that seems to provoke us at every turn. We are not asked to destroy our emotions. We are asked to see through them. To witness the tide rise, and to remain seated on the shore. Toa would often say, "Emotions are weather. You are the sky." And when storms of anxiety arrived, she instructed her students not to resist, but to open the window and let the wind pass through. "It's only when we close all the doors and try to contain it that we suffer," she said. "Let it pass." This is one of the deepest Buddhist lessons for anxiety, to allow the feeling without building a home for it. To let it visit, but not unpack its bags. When fear knocks, do not answer with resistance. Answer with breath. Return to your feet. Feel the ground. Let the world move, but do not move with it. To live without fear is not to be without uncertainty. It is to stop making uncertainty the enemy. Life will not promise permanence. But it promises presence, this breath, this step, this moment. There is a Zen story of a monk chased by a tiger. He runs until he reaches a cliff, and hanging from a vine, he sees the tiger above and the abyss below. Just then, he notices a single strawberry growing near the edge. He plucks it, eats it, and smiles. "This," he says, "is delicious." He did not deny the danger. He did not escape the uncertainty. But in the face of both, he found peace in chaos. He tasted the moment fully. The practice is not to remove the tigers or the cliffs. It is to not miss the strawberry. Each day, we are offered hundreds of strawberries, moments of grace, of beauty, of stillness. But we miss them because the mind is chasing tigers that may not even exist. To protect your energy is not to withdraw from life, but to be selective with what you allow to enter the temple of your mind. Be cautious of the news that floods your heart with fear. Be aware of the voices that teach you scarcity. Not out of judgment, but out of reverence for your peace. Even a few moments of silence, deeply felt, can nourish more than hours of noise. Each morning, Shoma began to sit after sweeping. Just 10 breaths. Then 20. Then he no longer counted. His life became a rhythm: sweep, sit, breathe, serve. When asked later what had changed him, he said, "No one changed me. Silence did. It held me when I could not hold myself." If you feel lost, know this: being lost is sacred. It means you have left the well-worn road. It means you are on the threshold of something real. The teachings do not always come in clarity. Sometimes they come in the form of confusion, breakdown, collapse. Do not run. Sit with the lostness. Let it become your teacher. There is a wisdom that only the lost can find. And when the mind screams that you must figure it all out, pause. Let the scream echo and fade. Beneath it, there is a whisper. You are already home. To transform your mind is not to change its contents, but to change the way you relate to them. You are not the thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts arise. Like the moon reflected in a pond, beautiful, but not graspable, your thoughts are not you. Watch them dance. Let them go. When the heart feels heavy with the world, return to the smallest gesture. Wash your hands slowly. Feel the water. Listen to the sound. This too is practice. The Dharma hides in the ordinary. And if there is a single teaching to hold above all others, it may be this: nothing is missing. Not from your breath. Not from this moment. Not from you. The path is not a distant road. It is the space between your next inhale and exhale. Walk it slowly. With bare feet. With open palms. With eyes soft enough to see the strawberry growing at the cliff's edge. And as night folds itself gently around you, like a robe pulled close by a weary traveler, remember what Toa whispered to Shoma under the stars. You do not have to be a different person. You only have to remember who you were before you forgot. In the pale stillness just before dawn, when the birds have not yet broken the silence and the earth breathes in its deepest rhythm, something timeless moves beneath all things. Not the ticking of the clock nor the rustle of wind, but the pulse of presence. It is in that unseen current that the teachings of the Dharma live, not as commandments, but as the quiet truths hidden in plain sight. Along the mist-veiled coast where the sea meets the cliffs in eternal conversation, there stood an old wooden bell tower. It had long been unused, its rope frayed and its wood worn silver by salt and rain. Yet, once a year, a monk named Daisetsu would climb the stairs and ring its bell at twilight. No one knew why. He never spoke of its meaning. And yet each year, the villagers would gather far below and sit in silence, waiting for the single toll that echoed across the valleys like a breath drawn in reverence. One year, a traveler happened to arrive in the village on the evening of the ringing. He asked an old woman why the bell was struck only once. She answered without turning her gaze from the hill, because once is enough, if you truly listen. This is how Buddhist teachings often arrive. Not with repetition, not with explanation, but with a single moment fully lived. One breath. One bell. One seeing. To live without fear in this world is not a fantasy. It is a possibility born from presence. Fear, most often, is the echo of a future that has not come. It grows in the gaps where the mind wanders too far ahead. But presence, when you truly arrive here, in this moment, leaves no room for fear to take root. When the bell rings, there is no past. There is no future. Only the vibration. Only the sound. Only the now. Daisetsu once said to a young monk, "If you can hear the bell in silence, you will never again chase peace." The way to find peace in chaos is to stop insisting the world be quiet. Chaos is not the obstacle, your resistance to it is. Like standing in a river and fighting the current, it is not the water that exhausts you, but your insistence that it should not flow. Instead, sit by the banks. Watch the current. Let it go where it must. That is what the breath teaches us with every inhale and exhale. It does not cling. It does not resist. It moves. And in its movement, it heals. There was once a blind nun named Koanna, who wandered from village to village with a staff and a bell at the end of her walking stick. Each step she took was met with the soft chime of the bell, a gentle reminder to all who heard it that even in blindness, one can walk in rhythm. One day, a child asked her, "Aren't you afraid of walking where you cannot see?" She smiled and replied, "I walk not with sight, but with trust. The earth meets my feet the same as yours." To transform your mind is to shift from controlling to trusting. Trusting the breath. Trusting impermanence. Trusting that even pain has its place in the tapestry of your becoming. Kohanna's bell became a symbol in the region, not of sorrow, but of presence. Its sound told the villagers that the teachings were not in books or temples, but in the very sound of a step taken mindfully, even in the dark. Sometimes, we do not need more light. We need to learn how to walk gently in darkness. The practice of mindfulness is not about perfection. It is about intimacy, with the moment, with the body, with the breath. When you wake in the middle of the night and your thoughts race like wild horses, do not try to stop them. Sit beside them. Listen. Let them run. And then, turn your attention to the breath. Inhale, and say inwardly, "I am here." Exhale, and say, "This is enough." These are not affirmations. They are recognitions. This moment, as it is enough. You, as you are enough. To stay calm and positive is not to fake a smile or ignore the truth. It is to root yourself so deeply in the truth that even sorrow cannot shake your clarity. Calmness does not come from having nothing to do. It comes from doing one thing at a time, with full attention. Even washing your face can become a prayer if your heart is quiet. And when the world seems to demand too much, remember the teaching of the single bell, once is enough. One deep breath. One moment of stillness. One act of kindness. The world asks for your speed. The Dharma asks for your presence. If you feel lost, the path invites you to stop searching and start seeing. You are not meant to be anyone else. You are not required to have it all figured out. The oak tree does not rush its growth. The moon does not apologize for its phases. Why should you? Let yourself be unfinished. Let yourself be tender. Let yourself be still long enough to hear the truth beneath all your thoughts. You are already what you seek. You do not need to become. You need only to return. There is a mountain path that monks have walked barefoot for centuries, its stones polished by devotion. At the peak, there is no shrine. No statue. Only a wide view of sky and silence. Many ask why there is no sacred marker at the top. And the answer, always, is this. Because the path is the temple. The journey is the teaching. So too with your life. The struggles. The quiet joys. The unanswered questions. All of it is sacred. All of it is part of the temple you are building with each breath. Even the moments you wish you could erase. Even the nights you weep. Even the mornings when your heart feels too heavy to lift. The bell still rings. The breath still flows. The earth still meets your feet. And so, walk gently. With no rush. With deep seeing. Let each step be a bow. Let each breath be a lantern. Let each silence be your teacher. You are not separate from the path. You are the path. You are the bell. You are the mountain. You are the sound that lingers after all else falls silent. In the final hour before sleep, when the world's noises have thinned and the stillness of the room begins to settle on your skin like soft mist, the teachings that once felt distant begin to rise like silent breath from within. These teachings are not foreign. They are not separate. They are the memory of what you already know, waiting for the mind to grow quiet enough to remember. On a lonely hillside where the grass grew long and untroubled by footfall, there stood a crumbling stone marker. No inscription remained, just moss and time. It was said to be the last trace of Master Enso, a recluse who had not spoken in the final 20 years of his life. He had chosen the hill not for solitude, but for openness. Each day, he would walk its ridge with a small bowl of rice and sit until the sun passed over the western slope. His students came not to learn techniques or doctrines, but to sit near him in silence. He once wrote only one line before he gave up words for good. Let the mind be like the wide sky, accepting all, holding nothing. This was his way. Enso did not fight the thoughts that came. He did not push joy away, nor did he cling to pain. When sadness came, he bowed. When laughter came, he allowed it to echo once, then vanish. He lived not from belief, but from seeing. To transform your mind, you must first understand that you are not trying to become something different. You are trying to see clearly what is already here, and to relate to it differently. Like the sky, your awareness is naturally vast. It is only the clouds of thought, the winds of emotion, the storms of reaction that obscure it. But the sky is never destroyed by weather. And neither are you. In a time of growing unrest, when fear and confusion spread like wind-blown embers, the teachings offer not solutions, but refuge. A place within that cannot be touched by headlines, nor shaken by noise. That place is not elsewhere. It is here. This breath. This body. This moment. To find peace in chaos is not to control the chaos. It is to remove the hooks that chaos grabs onto. When there is no grasping, even the storm passes through you like a shadow across water, momentary, without harm. One morning, Enso's youngest student, a boy barely old enough to hold a begging bowl, asked, "Master, how do I stop my thoughts? They're loud. They make me feel wrong." Enso looked at him, smiled softly, and picked up a pebble. He tossed it into the stream nearby. The boy watched the ripples. "That is what you do," the master said, pointing to the water. "You do not stop the stream. You stop trying to hold it. Thoughts are not problems. They are movements. Like wind. Like dreams. You do not need to push them away. You only need to stop building a home out of them. Even when pain arrives, physical, emotional, spiritual, you can meet it differently. You can sit with it like a guest. Offer it tea. Listen to what it has come to show you. And then, when its lesson is complete, it will go. This is not fantasy. This is the gentle discipline of awareness, practiced breath by breath. When people speak of how to stay calm and positive, they often imagine a version of themselves without pain, without sorrow, without hardship. But the calm that the Buddha pointed toward is not empty of emotion. It is full of wisdom. It is the calm of the mountain that stands while storms come and go. It is the calm of the old tree that sheds its leaves in fall and does not mourn them. That kind of calm does not come from wishing things were different. It comes from being with things as they are. To live without fear is not to be fearless, but to stop being ruled by fear. It is to feel it arise, to recognize it as old conditioning, and to breathe anyway. To speak anyway. To take the step anyway. A story is told of a woman named Maru who lived by the sea. She had lost everything in a storm, her home, her husband, her son. For a long time, she spoke to no one. But each evening, she walked to the cliff's edge and lit a small lamp. When asked why, she said, "I do not expect the light to reach anyone. But I do it so that my heart doesn't close." That is the courage the teachings call for. Not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of love in the midst of it. Maru eventually became a teacher, not by explaining doctrine, but by holding space for those whose grief had made them forget how to breathe. She taught them to sit by the waves. To feel the salt in the air. To listen not for answers, but for the rhythm of their own return. If you feel lost, know this: loss is not a punishment. It is a door. And sometimes, it is the only door that can lead you home. The way is not to resist it. The way is to walk through it, slowly, barefoot, breath by breath. Even in the smallest rituals, the teachings reveal themselves. The way you fold your blanket. The way you sip your tea. The way you listen when someone speaks without preparing your reply. All of it is practice. To protect your energy is to treat your attention as sacred. You would not pour clean water into a filthy bowl. So do not pour your sacred awareness into the bowl of constant distraction, comparison, judgment. Let your mind settle like still water. Let the debris fall. Let clarity return. Sometimes, clarity is not a great vision. Sometimes, it is simply this: the taste of warm rice, the smell of rain on dry earth, the breath as it leaves the nostrils. You do not need a spiritual retreat to touch the Dharma. You need only to stop turning away from your own life. Enso's final days were spent beneath a persimmon tree, watching its fruit fall one by one. He did not leave a legacy. He did not appoint a successor. He left silence. He left the wind through leaves. He left the hill with the stone marker, now overgrown, where people still come, not to pray, but to sit. To listen. To breathe. They come not for miracles. They come because they are ready to stop seeking. And in that stopping, they find what was never lost. The bell that rings without sound. The answer that asks no question. The breath that needs no effort. You are not outside the teachings. You are their expression. You are not meant to carry everything. You are meant to sit, to feel, to see. And in the space that opens, peace returns, not because you created it, but because it was always here, patiently waiting beneath the noise. There is a kind of silence that is not merely the absence of sound, but the soft arrival of something deeper. It does not begin when the noise ends, it begins when the heart is no longer tugged by the world's demands. That silence, when entered fully, becomes a temple. And in that temple, nothing needs to be said. Nothing needs to be added. Everything that is, just as it is complete. In the southern mountains, where the clouds hang low and the paths are covered with pine needles, there once stood a monastery built without walls. The monks slept beneath the trees, bathed in the river, and wrote their reflections on stones. This place had no hierarchy, no structure. It was known simply as the Circle of Wind, and its only teacher was a woman named Tsuyu. Tsuyu was old, so old that none could remember her youth. Her hair was long and silver, and her eyes seemed to look beyond the surface of things. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her words moved like water, soft, but impossible to hold. One day, a visitor came from the city. A scholar, clothed in fine robes, with ink-stained fingers and a satchel of sacred texts. He had studied all the sutras. He had debated with the finest teachers. But something was missing. He approached Tsuyu with great reverence and asked, "What is the essence of Buddhist wisdom?" She looked up from the bowl of rice she was stirring over the fire and said nothing. Instead, she handed him a single grain from the pot. He waited for more. But she returned to the fire. Confused, he tasted the grain. It was soft, plain, subtle. He chewed slowly, and for the first time in many years, he stopped thinking. That was the teaching. The whole path, in one simple grain of rice. To transform your mind is not to add more understanding, but to subtract the craving to always understand. It is to see through the constant need to define, to explain, to possess. The teachings are not complicated because truth is complicated, they are complicated because the mind is addicted to complexity. The more still you become, the more clearly you see, what you were seeking was never hidden. It was simply drowned out. You already know how to be free. You have simply forgotten. In the quiet of the forest, Tsuyu would often trace a circle in the dirt before sunrise. When asked why, she replied, "The circle has no beginning. No end. No edge. Like awareness. That awareness is always here, behind the veil of thought, behind the mask of emotion. You do not have to build it. You have only to stop ignoring it. And in that space, you can begin to live without fear. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer clinging to what cannot stay. Fear feeds on the illusion of permanence. But when you see clearly that all things rise and fall, breath, thought, life itself, there is no longer any need to hold so tightly. You begin to walk lighter. Speak gentler. Love more freely. To find peace in chaos is to discover that peace is not the opposite of chaos. It is the presence within it. Like the still point at the center of a spinning wheel. The wheel turns, but the center remains unmoved. You are that center. The path of practice is not about escape. It is about integration. It is not about leaving the world behind, but walking through it with eyes open, breath deep, heart soft. Each act becomes sacred when done with full presence. Sweeping the path. Washing a bowl. Offering a smile without expecting one in return. These are not small things. They are everything. There was once a young monk in Tsuyu's circle who grew impatient. He wanted enlightenment. He wanted visions, clarity, perfection. One day he approached Tsuyu, frustrated, and said, "I meditate. I fast. I serve. But still, I feel the same." She led him to the river and pointed to a patch of moss-covered stone just beneath the water's surface. "Touch it," she said. He placed his hand in the stream and touched the stone. It was soft. Green. Alive. She said, "This stone has not moved in 100 years. And yet, the water has shaped it." The lesson was clear. Do not mistake stillness for stagnation. Practice does not always feel like change. But slowly, silently, the stream of presence smooths the rough edges. It softens the hard places. It shapes you, not with force, but with patience. This is the way. If you feel lost, sit still. Not to find a destination, but to feel your own weight upon the earth. To hear your own breath in the darkness. To remember that being lost is not a problem, it is a return. You are not meant to be anywhere else. You are meant to be here. Even when here is uncomfortable. Even when here is uncertain. Especially then. The teachings do not promise that you will never suffer. They promise that you will not suffer unconsciously. That you will suffer with awareness. With compassion. With wisdom. And in doing so, suffering becomes something else entirely. It becomes depth. It becomes transformation. It becomes love. To protect your energy in the modern world is a sacred act. Not out of selfishness, but out of reverence for the flame within you. The mind is porous. Every word you hear, every image you see, every conversation you engage in, these are all seeds. Choose carefully what you plant. Silence is not empty. It is full of unseen growth. Rest is not laziness. It is the soil in which clarity takes root. Sometimes, the greatest protection is simply saying, "Not now." And sitting quietly by yourself. Tzu once said, "You cannot drink from a cup that overflows. First, pour some out. Let go of what no longer serves. Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the version of yourself that always tries so hard. You do not need to prove anything. You are already enough." And as the wind moves through the trees, and the moon rises slow behind the clouds, let yourself become soft again. Let the hardness melt. Let the thoughts settle like snow falling into still water. There is no rush. No destination. Only this breath. Only this presence. Only this quiet truth. You are already home. There are nights when even silence carries weight. When the world, though still, seems to hum beneath the surface of things, like a forgotten melody playing just beneath the sound of your thoughts. It is in these hours, when sleep hovers but does not yet descend, that a deeper seeing begins to unfold. The kind that does not depend on the eyes, but on something more ancient, older than language, older than identity. A monk named Cheyenne once wrote, "When the eyes close, the ears open. When the ears close, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, everything is heard." Cheyenne lived not in a monastery, but in a boat. A small, weathered vessel docked near the estuary where the river met the open sea. He owned nothing but a thin blanket, a clay bowl, and an old fishing net he no longer used. People called him mad. Or holy. He responded to neither. Each morning, he would sit at the bow of his boat and watch the tide come in. That was his practice. He did not chant. He did not speak. He simply watched. When asked once by a curious traveler why he did not return to the Sangha, why he chose isolation over community, Cheyenne replied, "I am not alone. I sit with the river, the salt, the sky. They teach me. To transform your mind is not to escape into ideas, but to return so deeply to your own breath, your own bones, your own listening, that the world begins to whisper its secrets again." We forget that life is always speaking. But we must grow quiet enough to hear. When the river laps against the side of the boat, when the wind moves through the reeds, when a bird lands without a sound, these are not background events. These are teachings. They are the Dharma made visible. They are the answer to the question you stopped asking the moment you filled your life with noise. The world is not waiting for you to master it. It is waiting for you to remember how to listen. Cheyenne once said, "A single moment of true listening is worth more than a lifetime of searching." This is how we find peace in chaos. Not by fixing the world outside, but by changing the relationship we have with what arises within. You do not need to win every argument with your mind. You only need to stop arguing. There is a space between thoughts. There is a pause between breaths. There is a stillness beneath movement. That is where peace lives. It is not an achievement. It is a returning. One evening, as the tide retreated and the moon hung low over the horizon, Cheyenne found a boy crying on the rocks. He had run away from the village. He said he had stolen something. He said he felt broken. He said he could not return. Cheyenne asked, "Do you know the tides?" The boy nodded. "Then you know," Cheyenne said, "that even the ocean withdraws. Not to leave us, but to return again and again." The boy didn't speak, but his shoulders eased. Cheyenne gave him his blanket. And they sat together until morning. To live without fear is not to deny your sorrow, your guilt, your shame. It is to hold them without judgment, like a parent holds a tired child. Fear is not a flaw. It is a teacher. It shows you where your tenderness still lives. It shows you where you still long to be seen, to be forgiven, to be whole. Let fear speak. But do not let it decide. Let it pass through, like wine through the branches. Let it rise. Let it fall. And then, just breathe. There is a story told in the high mountain villages of a woman named Satsu. She was known not for her teaching, but for her sweeping. Each morning before the sun rose, she swept the temple courtyard with such devotion that the wind seemed to pause and learn from her. One day, a novice approached and asked, "Why do you sweep so early?" She replied, "Because my mind wakes up before the sun." Sweeping, for her, was not chore. It was a ritual. A form of prayer. Not spoken, but enacted. Each stroke of the broom was a letting go. Of yesterday's dust. Of tomorrow's expectations. Of the moment's clinging. This is what it means to protect your energy. Not to wall yourself off from life, but to meet it so mindfully that nothing can enter uninvited. To meet the world on your terms, slow, soft, grounded. To allow what nourishes. To release what does not. Satsu was once asked how she remained calm while others were busy chanting or studying. She smiled and said, "They chase wisdom. I sweep it. It is not what you do that matters. It is the presence you bring to what you do. Even drinking water can be liberation. Even tying your sandals can be the gate to awakening. There is no need to be profound. Only to be present. If you feel lost, perhaps it is not because you have strayed too far, but because you have not yet paused long enough to see where you are. Stillness reveals what movement conceals. Sometimes, the most courageous act is to sit down and stop pretending you know the way. In that humility, the way reveals itself. Not all at once. But in small pieces. A feeling in the chest. A sudden tear. A single breath that feels like coming home. This is how awakening arrives, not like thunder, but like rain soaking into thirsty soil. Soft. Slow. Certain. Cheyenne spent his last years floating. He no longer tied his boat to the dock. He let it drift. Each morning, the villagers would wake and search the horizon, and always, somewhere in the distance, they would see the small shape of the vessel, still, silent, carried by the tide. When he passed, they found no body. Only the empty boat, rocking gently in the morning light. Some said the sea had taken him. Others said he had become the sea. But those who understood knew, he had returned. To that which holds all things. To that which never leaves. And even now, when the wind is right and the mist is thin, you can hear the faint sound of water lapping wood, and feel in your bones the memory of something vast, something still, something that has always been waiting. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply remembering. Sit with that. Breathe with that. And let the silence do the rest. When the last ember of daylight fades behind the silhouette of the hills, and the hush of night spills over rooftops and rivers, there is a subtle opening, a passage not carved in stone, but in silence. It cannot be entered by foot or thought, only by stillness. In that stillness, the teachings begin again, not as lessons from a master, but as echoes from your own breath, returning to you like old friends. In a secluded valley veiled in mist year-round, there was a monastery known only by those who needed to find it. It was not marked on maps, nor spoken of in towns. Travelers often passed it without noticing, for its buildings blended into the landscape, mud walls, reed roofs, stone steps grown soft with moss. The place was called Koanji, the Temple of the Riddle. There lived an old monk named Hakuin, whose laughter was as deep as his meditation. He taught not through sermons, but through riddles, gestures, and pauses. His students were few, for most who sought clarity could not endure his silence. Yet those who stayed came to understand that his silence was not empty. It was fertile. It held seeds that would one day bloom in the cracks of their certainties. One of his most enduring teachings came not in words, but in a bowl. He would serve tea to each student, always filling the cup to the brim, then pouring more, until it overflowed. At first, the students were confused, even irritated. Until one, younger than the rest, asked, "Master, why ruin the tea?" Hakuin smiled and finally spoke. "You are like this cup. So full of beliefs, desires, noise. Until you empty, nothing more can be offered. To transform your mind begins here, not in acquisition, but in emptying. The spiritual path is not a path of accumulation, it is a shedding, a return to the natural state beneath all striving. Empty the cup. Let the tea of ego, of performance, of control, spill away. Only then can stillness pour in. Stillness does not come when the world quiets. It comes when the heart no longer demands that the world be different. It comes when the mind no longer rushes toward what's next, or clings to what has passed. In that unclenching, peace is revealed, not as something created, but as something uncovered. This is how we begin to live without fear. Not by building walls, but by letting go of the idea that we are what we possess, what we achieve, or what others see. The root of fear lies in identification, with name, with body, with thought. But who were you before you learned your name? Before language separated you from sky and soil? Return there. To that nameless place. To that soft awareness behind the eyes. That is your true home. There is a story in the old scrolls of Koanji about a disciple named Rei, who struggled deeply with anger. His rage would erupt in meditation, in conversation, in solitude. He once told Hakuin, "I feel like fire. I cannot stop it." Hakuin led him to the mountainside at dusk and pointed to the setting sun. "Do you see the flame that burns there?" he asked. Rei nodded. "Can you touch it?" "No, master." "Then what burns you?" Ray stood silently, realization slowly softening his brow. What you feel, Hakuin said, is not the sun, but you're reaching for it. So it is with emotion. Anger arises. But it is not the anger that wounds, it is our grasping, our resistance, our stories around it. Let it burn. But do not feed it. Watch it flicker. Let it vanish. This is how we find peace in chaos. Not by defeating chaos, but by no longer being available for its game. By stepping out of the story that says you must win, be right, be more, be praised. There is a deeper success, one the world cannot reward, being at peace with yourself when no one is watching. There was another figure in Koan-ji. A nun named Soriai, whose name meant silent bell. She never taught with words, yet all sought her company. She would walk barefoot in the early mornings, scattering rice to the birds, tracing her finger across stone, whispering to the wind. When asked why she did not speak, she replied, "Because I once spoke too much, and none of it was true." Her silence was not avoidance, it was deep listening. Sometimes, to protect your energy, you must become quiet enough to hear your own voice again beneath the noise of others. Not to isolate, but to recalibrate. To remember what is yours and what is merely echo. Soriai's presence taught more than any sutra. When people sat near her, they wept. Not out of sadness, but out of the sudden arrival of themselves. To be seen in silence is often more healing than to be praised in words. We carry so many identities. So many roles. And beneath them, the simple truth waits patiently. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. To stay calm and positive is not to force a smile or suppress the dark. It is to honor the entire weather of your being, the rain and the bloom, the winter and the thaw. Positivity rooted in denial is brittle. But calm rooted in clarity is unshakable. Cheyenne, the boat monk of the estuary, once said, "The flower opens not because it tries, but because the sun rises." So too must you trust the rising. Not every day will feel soft. Some days will crack you open. Let them. The cracking is not the end. It is the beginning of breath entering where it could not before. And if you feel lost, know this, what feels like wandering is sometimes the sacred art of returning. The way back is not forward. The way back is down, into the body, into the breath, into this precise moment. One inhale. One exhale. No effort. Just being. Let the world spin. Let others rush. You, slow down. Feel the weight of your hands. The hum beneath your feet. The small warmth behind your chest. This is enough. More than enough. You are not behind. You are not late. You are here. And that, in the language of the Dharma, is the first step, the middle path, and the final return, all at once. As the moon reaches its highest point in the velvet sky, the world below holds its breath, not out of fear, but reverence. There is something holy about the stillness of this hour, when even the trees seem to lean in closer to listen. It is in these sacred moments, where words fall away, that the ancient teachings unfold most clearly, not through scripture, but through the quiet pulse of life itself, beating just beneath your awareness. In the northern reaches of the old land, where snow blankets the earth for most of the year, there once lived a woman named Ine. She was not known for sermons or scrolls, but for walking silently each morning across the frozen field behind her hut, dragging behind her a rake made of worn birch branches. Each step she took left a path in the snow, a spiral, a loop, a winding maze. She called it the trace of the mind. Villagers, at first amused, later grew curious. What was the meaning of these silent patterns? Why carve paths that would disappear with the next snowfall? One day, a young girl followed her and asked, "What are you drawing, grandmother?" Ine paused, placed her rake in the snow, and whispered, "I am watching my thoughts melt." There was no teaching more profound than this. We spend our lives writing stories in the snow of our minds, names, identities, fears, ambitions, only to be dismayed when the sun rises and they vanish. But Ine knew, it was not permanence she sought, but presence. To watch each thought arise and fall. To participate fully in this disappearing world without clinging. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Impermanence is not the problem. It is the door. It is the reason love is precious. The reason breath is sacred. The reason awakening is not someday, but now. To transform your mind, begin not with striving, but with noticing. Where does your mind rest? On memory? On judgment? On desire? Do not push it away. Simply see it. Awareness, like sunlight, reveals without aggression. One monk once asked, "How do I purify my mind?" The old master replied, "Do nothing. Just stop throwing dirt in the well." You need not chase purity. You need only stop clouding what is already clear. The mind, when left alone, settles on its own, like muddy water placed in a still jar. To find peace in chaos, begin by no longer blaming the chaos. The world has always been storm and sun, fire and bloom. The teaching is not about changing the weather, but learning how to sit by the window without losing yourself to the wind. Ine taught this not through lectures, but through ritual. She boiled her tea slowly, washed her bowl with both hands, paused before entering any room. She walked slowly, not because her legs were old, but because her attention was full. One winter, she sat with a young boy whose father had passed. He was angry, quiet, heavy with grief. She offered him a bowl of warm barley and sat beside him without a word. Only after many minutes did she speak, "Eat slowly." That is how the heart learns to breathe again. No doctrines. No answers. Only presence. In time, the boy returned each day, not for advice, but to sit and eat in silence. That is how Buddhist lessons for anxiety are given. Not by silencing the mind, but by accompanying it gently until it no longer needs to shout. When your inner world is spinning, ask not how to stop the wheel, but how to center yourself at its axis. Everything else will turn, but you remain still. To live without fear does not mean to never feel afraid. It means to bow when fear arrives, to offer it tea, and to listen with the understanding that all guests eventually leave. There was a ritual Ine practiced during storms. She would light a single candle and place it in the snow outside her hut. When asked why, she said, "So that the dark knows it has not won." Even the smallest light changes the whole landscape. Your breath, when taken with awareness, is that light. Your choice to pause before reacting is that light. Your willingness to begin again, without shame, is that light. Let it be enough. To protect your energy, begin by noticing where it leaks. Not just in busyness, but in self-judgment, in rumination, in the need to be liked, in the endless effort to become someone more worthy. These holes are invisible, but they drain your life. Seal them with compassion. With silence. With space. Ine once said, "If you carry a cracked jar, walk slower." Your healing requires pace. It requires attention. And sometimes, it requires stopping completely. Do not fear the pause. The world will wait. Even the sun rests. Even the wind sleeps. Even the enlightened sit in silence more often than they speak. And if you feel lost, remember this: the seed does not fear the dark. It needs the soil, the pressure, the hidden time. You are not off the path. You are beneath it, letting your roots deepen. You are not behind, you are becoming. Let the dark hold you. Let it teach you. Let it shape you into something softer, wiser, more whole. In her final winter, when Ine could no longer rake the snow, she sat each morning by the window and simply watched. She said nothing. But those who visited said her gaze carried more stillness than any temple bell. And when the last snow fell, and her breath slowed to its final rhythm, they found no words by her side. Only a single cup, still warm. And her footprints, fading into the white. Let that be your teaching. You do not need to leave behind great words. Only a presence that lingers softly after you've gone. A kindness that outlasts the moment. A silence that nourishes others even in your absence. This is the way. Walk it slowly. Live it fully. Let each breath be a bow.